Hello, everyone. We're mixing things up a little bit today. No, not with another guest. We always have fantastic guests every week. That's not different. We've got Will Wilson, who's the Director of Educational Partnerships from the Virtual Enterprise International, which is all about giving high school students experiential experiences so that they learn how to become entrepreneurs. And Will and I were just having a conversation just before we went live because I serve on the board of VEI. The kids are getting younger. They're in middle school, financial reports, and all this kind of stuff. So we're going to get into that. And of course, we've got our co-founder here, Mr. Phil Vitrano, who's here with us. So we're going to dive in by saying, Will, what do you want folks to know as we open up this webinar here in this podcast about VEI and about what students need and they're looking for?
Absolutely. I mean, so we're here to talk about the ways to prepare students for the future of work. But and Virtual Enterprises International, we're one form of how schools can do that in school. And so Virtual Enterprises is a program where students, both high school and middle school, as you pointed out, have an opportunity to form and run and operate a simulated business together in class throughout the entire year. And so this really allows students to run the full gamut and learn everything they can about running a business, not just launching, coming up with a product, but running their business and operating their business throughout the entire year. And they're connected through a banking system that allows them to buy and trade and sell with students from all over the country and internationally as well. But we're really here to talk about the preparing students for the future of work. So VE does that as well, but there are many programs out there that do this. And we wanted to give 7 ways to prepare students for the future of work. And so if you want, I can jump right into the first point. We can get going.
Well, I was going to say that, but I wanted to just maybe ask one more little bit of setup question in and around why is it that, I mean, VEI has been around 20 plus years, and how teachers and counselors, without sounding pitchy, right? This is, we're not doing, but teachers and parents, people are gravitating to your program because it's hands-on and it's real. And I think that there's something that's missing from so many of the school programs today where everything's virtual, like it's all avatar, and people don't get to work together and be able to have that level of integration, even at the professional level, not just at the educational level. I just wanted you to comment on that before you dived into your top 7.
Yeah, we joke around the name Virtual Enterprises sometimes has a 1996 version of what we're looking to do, which is bring students together to run a business as a class throughout the entire year. They do this in person, in class together. They're connected virtually by that banking system. But this is really appealing. I think it's appealing to parents and graduates and business leaders all around because it's easy to relate to. They're now in the workforce. Those who are in the workforce, they're now seeing the benefits of a program like this. They're able to come into the classroom in this class and relate to what the kids are doing more than probably any other class. I don't know if you've seen, I walked into my daughter's math class recently to help out, and it was a totally different type of math, and I was kind of confused. When you walk into a VE classroom, they're doing the same financial statements that you would do for a real business. They're working on the same marketing problems that you would in a real business. So it's really easy to relate to. There isn't a day where a kid in a VE class goes, when am I going to use this in my life? They're constantly doing these things that will prepare them for their futures, wherever they may go, whatever career or industry or business they end up in. They're going to need to know how to work. So getting that experience at the high school is both really powerful for the kids and really easy to relate to as an adult or a business professional or a parent to what the kids are doing.
I think that that's key because Phil and I see that. We see that with the youth where there's an unwillingness and there's a disconnect, right? And a distance. And I love that it's hands-on and it's real. I've mentored some of these students in that before that have gone through the program, and they have all these perturbations like, oh, okay, your CEO has quit. Now what do you do? Right as you're starting, but the CEO is the face of the brand. What do we do? And these real life examples that get them thinking and working together in a different way. Anyway, I won't steal the thunder anymore. Hit us up. What's your first step?
First up, So kind of just like what you were talking about is making learning hands-on. So another reason why it's relatable, another reason why VEI is good. But if you're looking to prepare students for the future of work, no matter what type of class or what type of program, you need to make that learning hands-on. Because students and all humans really, we retain information better when we're trying things out and doing things, not just listening and receiving this information. And experiential learning really kind of helps bridge that gap. And so when VE simulates a business environment, it gives students that full year of managing departments like HR or marketing or finance. And they have to meet real deadlines. They're measured through engagement trackers and self peer performance evaluations. And they're not hypothetical tasks. They're solving real problems, things like that. So when you make the learning hands-on and engaging, it builds confidence and competence in students in a way that kind of traditional or older education often doesn't. And when students understand like why they're learning math and apply it to real world concepts, like loans or taxes or things like that, they then gain tools and skills that they could use well into the future. So first, make learning hands on.
And Phil's an MBA here, so he knows a lot about the money and the finance. And Phil, what do you think? If we had more folks, students in particular, at any age, right? Because a lot of people are financially illiterate in adulthood, that if we made math so that it wasn't just core math and we got wrapped around the axle with all that, but we looked at it and said it's bill math, right? Going out, how do you budget? How do you pay your bills? How do you look to what you can invest in? Can you talk to us just about that with all the students you see and coach?
Yeah, so tremendously valuable what you're doing, and entrepreneurship business is really one of the decisions they're going to be making is, am I going to go into business? And if I get a familiarity with it, and I get to work as a team and know and understand what I'm going to be facing in the world of business, and I like the all the different, I mean, problems come up all the time in the world of business, and getting them to work on critical thinking skills and not to panic and know and understand how to manage and handle them. And so this is valuable insights for high school students to be prepared and practice, which is great. And they're playing roles. So that's another great component. And they're not all playing the same hat
Yeah.
because they all have different skills and unique interests. And that's another good part of this program is that you're not dialed in to everybody's going to be working in HR. Everybody's going to be working in operations. Everybody's going to be working in finance. So this is real world, is that you get to have choices and you could play the role of what you think you may be interested in. And that'll help you in your career related decisions. So I applaud you for having such a great program. And I heard it was for a year. Most high schools around here in New York, half a year tops for a virtual enterprise component. And I'm engaged with the students. They're interested in constructive feedback. So if they're doing the hands-on and they're open to hear from the people, the panel outside of their teachers, they're more engaged than generally in any sort of class that is teaching American history, European history, where they're not practicing, they're not doing hands-on. It is just memorization. And if you like storytelling, that's good. But it's nothing that's someone's going to be doing in generally in the real world unless they want to be a social studies teacher.
So I think you just perfectly queued up his tip number two, right? Right,
Yep.
Will? It's
Yeah,
perfect.
yeah, bridging the classroom and workplace. I really want this to, like I said in the beginning, like this is such a good natural conversation too. So I love but tip number two that I wrote down was bridging the classroom and the workplace. As I spoke to really earlier about the why VE is appealing to alumni and to parents and to business professionals, because they see that, when you're preparing students for the future of work, you need to bridge that classroom and workplace divide. There's a gap there. We talk about this, traditional education, the skills needed in the workplace. There's a stark difference between what a typical high school student across the United States experiences versus what their life is going to be like post graduation. And so it's really important that we help teachers connect that curriculum to the workforce expectations. So, and with the support of industry partners, I mean, teachers have a lot of their plate as it is. So as industry partners or business professionals or people looking, we need to get them invited into the classroom, and not just as guest speakers. Guest speakers is great. Could open the eyes in some cases, but really, for example, in VE, business partners, when we bring them in, they come in as mentors. They all have the opportunity to coach the students throughout the entire year. And then if they want to, they can even engage as judges during the competition season to focus on assessment. So really getting the business partners and business professionals into the classroom is extremely important on bridging that gap there and kind of reconnecting that disconnect that has happened over the years. And when you bring them in, the connections really bring a lot of credibility and relevance to students' work. And there's all kinds of data and evidence that backs this up too. When you start to bridge this classroom in the workplace, when you start to bring the students bring the real world into the students, the list goes on and on. I mean, we have ACTE and Advanced CTE and Gallup and all this research that's done that kind of proves that these career connected learning experiences have a major impact on students.
Well, I want to highlight briefly too the impact that it has on the people who are doing the mentoring. Like I said, I've done some myself. Now, in the last year, not as good as I was. But I am doing the judging and all that stuff because I can be judgy, right? But anyway, the impact as a mentor is that you start to see things through other people's eyes, right? And you see it and think, wow, I might see some of myself in that person. I think of myself when I was younger. Or you start to see that, ooh, maybe they're going down a road because you did, and you can start to steer them. And it's such a wonderful opportunity to have that impact, and you can build that with somebody and really see that you're helping people.
Yeah, I mean, shameless promotion. We're always looking for more mentors, coaches, and judges in the VE world. But one of the best things that I hear when I talk to people after they judge or go in and coach or mentor or talk with the VE students and the VE JV students. And I had this experience last week when we had our youth business summit in the Javits Center, Jacob Javits Center in New York City. 5,000 kids came for 280 booth trade show. And one of the gentlemen that was helping judge on his way out said, there's a lot of doom and gloom in our world right now. And, we're always worried. And you always hear like all these terrible things about the next generation, blah, blah, blah. They can't do this. He goes, I feel a little bit better now leaving, that if my life's going to be in the hands of these kids, I'll be all right with that. So there's a disconnect because this is happening all over the country. We have about 30,000 students that go through a VE program, and we're one of many programs like ours. And we have 30,000 kids a year go through this program. So 30,000 kids are getting this experience. But this gentleman had to come in person and see it to then be re-inspired by this next generation coming up saying, they're not as bad as they're made up to be, or there's not these stereotypes and things like that go out there and you see. And so interacting, getting that engagement, you're right. It benefits the mentors and coaches and judges just as much as it benefits the young people.
Yeah, this is an outstanding model. I always share with parents and students how important it is to have mentors and to have a support system. And so you are enabling them to work with adults, which is wonderful because they're not going to be interviewing with their friends for jobs. So the more practice that they get, and some of the students are just generally introverts. And so these are hard conversations for them. And so when you have a program like yours, that it is requiring the students to have a mentor and everyone's going through it, this is a much better experience than if they're trying to figure this out all by themselves. So I, again, applaud you for implementing these programs because it is unheard of in public schools to normally utilize resources outside the school on any sort of daily basis. So if the mentors are there at any, I don't know the situation on how often or frequent it is, but it's much better than the one-time visits because the students generally will not engage, no matter how impressive, how great that person was. They're too timid to take advantage of that person to really benefit of building a relationship with them.
For sure. And I think that, oh, sorry, go ahead, Dr. L.
I was going to say, just on that whole building relationships, I was just sitting here. I'm in Virginia Beach at an HR and leadership event, and there was a gentleman here, and we were just having a conversation before we went live, and his book is all about leadership and networking. And it's like the infinite network that you have to keep working at it. But if we could get to folks younger, at a younger age, they start to learn the value of it sooner. And then it becomes something that becomes habit forming, and they really pick it up and focus on it. And that's just, I think that that's what's one of the things that's critically needed.
Yep. There's like tip number 5, I think we touched on now. Tip number 4, like I'm looking at my notes and I'm thinking like we're good. But tip number 3, I'll stick to my list that I wrote down ahead, because my ADHD will jump all over if I don't do that. So tip number 3, though, that I have for preparing students for the future is developing career-ready skills. And we designate those as both soft and technical skills, because the soft skills, or some people call them durable skills, communication, time management, adaptability, they're consistently cited by employers as the critical gaps that we see in the graduating students before they enter the workforce. And so making sure that students are taught those soft or durable skills, and it's not easy to do, because if you look at a traditional classroom, what's the content area chemistry? How do I teach my kids soft skills when they're learning chemistry? So, but in this case, in VE or in a business class, the students are regularly collaborating across teams. They're managing conflict. Conflict resolution is one of the best things to watch these young people go through, because they get to test it out too, and if they and try it out. But they manage conflicts. It really is like a built-in leadership workshop. People pay thousands of dollars to go to leadership workshops in the business world, and these kids are getting it for free during their education. So it's really, it teaches them how to give and receive feedback. It builds that professional maturity. And then it really highlights a lot of transferable skills. Most industries will tell you we can teach the kids the skill they need to know. We can't teach them these transferable skills. Adaptability, for one. Like, we can't teach a student to be adaptable and be able to pivot and change on a dime. They need to learn that by doing, and learn that before the workplace and where they're in the workplace expected to be able to do it. So the soft skills, and then the technical skills. So AI has sort of really shifted the paradigm. So technical skills is much harder to ensure. What are we teaching our students in high school, and how do we ensure that this is going to be useful in the future of work? Well, if these seniors that we have right now, when they were freshmen, barely anybody was talking about AI. So to say that we can get them all the technical skills that they need for the future of work, that's a hard task to go with. But we can build on the foundational things. And as it switches, as it changes, we need to be able to adapt and start to integrate that. And in VE, we've adapted. Students have started creating advertisements with AI. They've started creating video commercials with AI. And we've adapted our rubrics and our competition rules and things according to AI. We've even started to integrate some forms of AI in our judging itself to as we grow and we start to hit thousands and thousands of kids submitting these presentations. We've started to utilize AI to be able to screen out and give feedback to every student really, really quickly. In addition to human judges, I always want to say they're not only being judged by AI. So, the technical skills, it's important to help build those foundational skills, set them up so that they're not behind their peers as they leave and graduate. So, but soft skills and durable skills, those are the things that we really tackle in our program, and that is hugely important to preparing students for whatever type of work they go to in the future.
Excellent. And since that's generally not the public goal for public education, the goal is, and the mission is, a high school diploma, which has nothing to do with career readiness. So thank goodness you're bridging the gap and identifying those important soft skills and those technical skills that they could learn.
And as a provider, like as Steeris, we provide soft skills. And this is the thing, there's so much resistance. Everybody's doing this, finger pointing, right? The parents are saying it's up to the teachers to teach it. The teachers are saying it's up to the parents to do it, right? Or they say, wait until the youth graduates and goes on to the business, and it's up for the businesses they need to pay for it, but the businesses say, I'm not paying for it. Students need to learn it on their own. And then you say the students, okay, here's an opportunity. They say, I can go to TikTok and grab it. But they can't, right? You need this level of interactivity, and interaction, I should say, so that the students can learn and apply it hands-on while it's in the moment. Otherwise, it's too esoteric. You can't talk about adaptability, so try and train it. You can't teach grit. To me, that's one of the soft skills you cannot teach. You have to fail, and you have to want to pull yourself back up. Because if you don't, you're going to struggle. You can't teach somebody to want to do it. You can try to motivate, try to inspire them, but ultimately the click has to happen here for them to do. So I'm glad that you guys are on that and making that happen.
Yeah. And there's, as a general goal for our society, we should be trying to figure out how to make this happen in as many classrooms as we can, because otherwise you're going to have massive amount of inequity from those who have and have not. And so you're going to have the ones that are able to rally the resources and things needed to get them those soft skills, those durable skills, and start to work on that and have those opportunities, and those that are left behind. So it's really important that we figure out more ways to do this in schools, and more ways to prepare students for all students for their futures.
That's right. You just gave yourself the perfect segue to tip number 4, because that's what it is. You've
Yep.
got a problem. How do you solve it? And you need to think critically about it. You can't just absorb
Precisely.
TikTok and decide, oh, we'll solve it this way.
Oh yeah. I mean, so really important for any child's future is that their problem solving and critical thinking skills. If you have a good foundation, your problem solving and critical thinking skills, you can really go anywhere you choose to at that point. But using real world challenges, like launching a new product for your business, or balancing a budget for a business, they really spark creativity and those logical processing skills. We need them to have the ability to reason and analyze information, and then draw valid conclusions, make sound decisions. And that's like the technical way of describing, the logical processing skills. But we really need those students to come out with those. And if we encourage like a design thinking mindset where they're leading with empathy, they're ideating on it, they're prototyping their products, they're testing, they're reflecting. That process that we use in VE, the design thinking process that we use, can be used for many facets of life. They use it in order to come up with their business, their product or service, but they can use that for just their daily lives, their interactions with other human beings. Starting with empathy, understanding your customer's problem, understanding your peer's problem, then kind of generating some ideas, prototyping those ideas out, testing, reflecting. It sounds like, the design thinking process that we use to help them come up with better business ideas is really like a design thinking process of being a better friend, being a better person, being a better listener, and so we could all use a little more empathy in the world right now. And I think that using design thinking, for example, is the way we do it, to teach them problem solving, critical thinking skills, is it really is helpful for the students, and allowing them that space to wrestle with the ambiguity or not knowing, and don't always provide them the answer. Here's the answer key. You can look up whether you got it right or wrong. That really allows students to work on that problem solving, that critical thinking, and making sure they're engaging with the work that they're doing.
To me, one of the most important things that I see with respect to design thinking. So as a practitioner, years and years ago, right, back when the dinosaurs still ruled the earth, and I had this one really big job at a top Fortune 10 company, and I was leading the innovation group. And I said, oh, okay, what's my assignment? And it came from the board of directors themselves. They were looking to expand their product line into adjacent markets. And I said, okay, what's the brief? And the brief had 2 words: define pleasure. That's it. And I'm like, that's kind of wide open, right? But that was the whole thing. It was that level of ambiguity that we all, as the team, I got to handpick my team, that we got to be comfortable with. And that's, I think, one of the big gaps that's missing with the critical thinking and problem solving. Students today are uncomfortable with uncertainty and ambiguity. right? Uncertainty, I get. There's, of course, it's going to create anxiety. We look at what's going on in the world. But with respect to ambiguity, I have so many interns and others that lose their minds if you don't give them the rubric and say,
Yeah.
we're going to grade you on 2.5% of this, 1.5% on this, 6.5 on this. And if they don't have that, they're like
What do I
no
get for
bad.
signing my name?
Right. It's like, where's that? Where do I do? Do I do that part? I don't think we need to do the part. It's like, oh my God, step away from the Gen AI and really think about what's going on here. Get comfortable in that ambiguity and say, where does it go? Try it and explore, right? Experiment. And so I love that's a key part of what you guys do.
Yeah, getting comfortable with the uncomfortable. And it happens to me now where I'll want to look something up and I won't have my phone on me, and I'll get that moment like, but I really want to know the answer. They've never known anything other than that. They can always look up the answer, or an answer, I should say, to anything. So they're kind of starting with a stack against them on problem solving, critical thinking, because they could just look up the answer. They could find a YouTube video on how to do it. They don't have to try.
They need to go to their public library with folks like Phil and I, where we say, this is the microfiche section of the library. Microfiche? What's microfiche? Back in the day, right? If you didn't have the Encyclopedia Britannica at your house to do your homework, you had to go to the public library and look up stuff on the microfiche.
It will be between volume 1 and 8,562. Good luck. So absolutely. Let's go to the next one though. So exposing students to diverse career pathways. This one's really important for preparing them for their future workplace, because that could be anything. And the more they're exposed to, the better. The less they're exposed to, the less they know. And one of our favorite sayings at VE is, students cannot be what they cannot see. So if students are not able to see themselves, see the jobs that are out there, see the different opportunities out there, and see people that look like them, talk like them, act like them doing these jobs, they cannot even imagine themselves in those jobs in many cases. So they cannot be what they cannot see. So early exposure helps. And as you mentioned, it seems like the kids are getting younger. They are. We have a JV middle school program now, because early exposure helps the students connect to something meaningful in their future. And middle grade students especially are at risk of limiting their personal goals based on career stereotypes. So these self-limiting aspirations start to really creep into play in middle school. They'll start to say, there's a male dominated profession, let's say engineering, computer science. If a female student starts to see those limitations on there, they'll start to self-limit. Same thing. If a male student wants to become a nurse and they only see pictures and videos and descriptions and guest speakers of female nurses, they might not say, well, that's not for me. So in middle school, they're very, very malleable. They're very easily influenced. And so the early we expose them to a diverse number of career pathways, and not just show them what exists, but like how people got there through storytelling, lived experience. Where did they come from? Do they have a similar background to me? Can I see myself doing that now because I've heard this story? And so really starting to set up things like company tours, virtual company tours, Q&A panels, job shadowing days can be broadening. One of my favorite events that we do with VE is our Winning Women event. And that gives the opportunity for these aspiring young girls who are business leaders in their VE or VEJV businesses to come together and network with and learn from women leaders all throughout businesses. And that is one of my favorite ones. I have a 6-year-old daughter. When she's old enough, she's going to one of these Winning Women events because in middle school, the girls are kicking butt. They're CEOs, or CFOs, or CMO. They're the chiefs, they're the presidents, they're the leaders of their companies in middle school. And then what we know what the real world stats are around the number of CEOs for Fortune 500 companies are nowhere near that. So we are starting 3. Is it 3%? Yeah.
No, it's 3 out of the 500.
3 out of the 500. Okay. I was even worse. But it's we really want to start making a change on that. And so some of the things we can start to do is really introduce these students to many different career pathways, show them what's possible out there, let them find their thing is so important. Entrepreneurship can be one pathway, but there's so many. And some students, they'll build businesses, but others will build really good teams inside existing businesses.
And that's what I love. As a STEMinist, that's how I brand myself. So I'm all about it. And when I hear grade 8 girls not 1/3 of them, by the time they switch from grade 8 to grade 9, they hate sports and they start to drop out of sports. After grade 9, they really drop out. But 75% of them hate math and science, switching from grade 8 going into grade 9, right? Somewhere along the lines that summer, I don't know, they discover all kinds of other things about themselves and all the rest of this and start exploring that facet of life and teenageness. But it just, they lose interest, and it's heartbreaking because it's like, that's when you've got to get them. So I love hearing that it's middle school.
Yeah, I mean, we have not, as a society, have done a terrible disservice to all students by not providing them and understanding their options. And it's not a goal of public schools or private schools to ensure that they know and understand the pathways that they can take and know what their options are. I'm really curious if you know, on a percentage basis, how much time do you dedicate to the students exploring the wide diversity of careers?
No, I mean, always more than what's going on right now.
No. So your program,
Oh,
how
in our program. So
in
I
your
mean,
program?
the students are. I thought you meant like what are they getting exposed to now in a typical education? I was gonna say not enough.
No.
But yeah. So in our percentage, so in middle school, we focus a lot on career exploration, around giving them the idea of what's out there, what's possible, and then in our high school programs, they're really focused around career development as much as exploration too, because it's really. I always tell kids, it's important to find out what you want to do in life. It's also important to find out what you don't want to do in life, especially before you go spend a lot of money on a college degree for it. So the students are able to test drive out these careers all year long. And as in any business, there are transfers between departments. If students don't enjoy the job that they're doing in the marketing department and they want to go to a different department, they talk to their HR department in their VE business and they get a transfer to a different department. And so they have another opportunity to try something out like HR or like accounting. And so the as far as career exploration goes, it is a big part of the beginning of the program, and the middle school program is primarily focused on career exploration. In the VE high school, it's about exploration, but also developing those skills. So they're going to get to try out a couple different careers in there as well. I do have to say that as far as exposing students to as many possible careers as possible, is something that the schools and education needs to do in addition to programs like VE, because VE is going to give them a lot of experience in a lot of different departments and pathways, but it's not necessarily going to show them astronauts you're talking about, or computer science and things like engineering. They need to be it needs to be kind of a parallel conversation that the students hopefully starting in middle school. And so, but sorry, go ahead, Dr.
I was going to add, like, especially when we keep blurring the definition. So Blue Sky, of course, went up today. Woohoo! The all-female crew. They were not crewing. They were touring, right? They were space guests. And so I think it's really important to understand the difference, right? Celebrity access is totally different from competing to get into school at NASA and studying and being selected to be an astronaut, right? And so I think with these blurred lines, we've got to be in some ways, so I'm going to sort of sit on both sides of the fence. We've got to be less specific because it should be how the Gen Z and Gen Alpha see it, right? They've got fresh lenses and let them look, right? That fresh perspective. But in other ways, we should be a little tighter about our definitions so that people can understand what is involved. So you can make decisions that maybe you're not emotionally connected with that pathway, or maybe, quite frankly, you're not going to be able to pursue that pathway given whatever limitation is real, not talking about the self-imposed ones. And I think we have to be realistic about that too. So I think there's some blurry lines there.
Yep. Knowing what's out there, and then but being able to pivot, because like we saw with the growth of AI, that has changed a lot of jobs in that industry now. And so what we thought was, hey, you got a for sure job when you graduate high school with these skills, or when you graduate college with these skills. Well, that might have changed a little bit. So, that's why it's super important to kind of go back to those durable and universal skills that teach students the ability to to be scrappy, to adapt, to pivot, like you said, grit, and letting them learn those things through trying, which sort of kind of segues into tip number 6,
Well, I
which
think it
is,
segues into tip 7.
it does,
Actually, more like,
yes.
so maybe we'll go to 7 and come back to 6, because I know
Let's
that's
do
Phil's
7.
first thing,
Yeah.
like be the CEO of your career. So let's jump to 7. Let's mess people up and go, wait, you went from 5 to 7. What are you doing,
You
Laurel?
can't miss 6. We're going to
I
go back.
can't adapt.
Rewind. Pivot. So you're right. So tip 7, normalizing failure as a learning tool. We need to start to, well, I should say, students avoid risk for the fear of getting it wrong, because for many years of their education, they're trying to get the right answer. What's the right answer? What's the right answer on the test? What's the right answer? So, but in the real world, failure's all over the place. Failure is part of innovation. Find any successful entrepreneur or business owner and be like, have you ever failed before? Of course, they're going to fail a ton of times. And so you need to really start to build a classroom culture that celebrates iteration and feedback, and it's okay to fail. And just make sure that they learn how to reflect and adjust and try again, because resiliency might be the most important skill that we can teach these kids about the future of their work. And resiliency is a skill that needs practice. You don't just magically you don't graduate with resiliency. So sharing stories of successful professionals who learn through setbacks, like I said, building that culture of the classroom that celebrates trying again, reiterating, and feedback and improvement, and just modeling for students how to reflect and adjust and then try again. It's always good to try again.
Because we all know that old adage, right? Fall down 7, get up 8 times.
Yep.
Right. And that's, I don't think we emphasize that enough, because entrepreneurship, it's not easy. I can count way more failures than I can count successes. Right. It's how it goes. It's tough road.
Yeah, we're definitely keyed in on grades. We're keyed in on right answers. And it is absolutely a shift for the students to adapt and understand that there's multiple answers that can be right, and or you could be, all the strategies that you could go after to accomplish goals.
Yep. And you can be wrong and not good. I mean, we'll use a sports analogy. Tom Brady, he wasn't the first draft pick, right? He was near the end. And he's like the GOAT now, right? The greatest of all time.
And he didn't complete all his passes.
No, he did not. Although Patrick Mahomes is, catching up to him, but all that. But there's that, right? Or even, I'll use a Canadian analogy. Wayne Gretzky, the unbeatable record, 895 goals. Alex Ovechkin, right? Last week, beat it convincingly, right? So you can't ever look at that and say, because of this, then not that, right? You can't. It's a non sequitur. Like you really have to say, there's a potential, there's an opportunity, and you've got to keep giving it, right? You got to keep trying. You can't give up.
Absolutely. Hard to measure. We have to admit that. Hard to measure, especially compared to fill out this multiple choice question test and I'll be able to score you. That's your grade. Done. Easy. Much harder to measure, but not impossible to measure. And so let's go back to tip 6 then and talk about letting students take ownership of their learning. So agency is huge in the workplace. Like that ability to take a risk, make a mistake, and then recover from it is sought after by a lot of industry leaders. And students don't typically get to that opportunity in school. They need to learn how to get better by working on their skills, and especially after making mistakes. So this maybe should have been tip 7, but tip 6. So, but owners really, ownership of that work leads to engagement. And there's even more evidence around just engagement as a factor for students. When they're more invested, they drive the process and they own that work, they are more engaged. And if they are more engaged, they're going to do better with their studies across all academics. Engagement is one of the leading factors that you can look at with students to look at their success across almost every category of their academics and their success beyond it. So if we set the expectations really high and then let the students navigate how they're going to do that and own their work, they're invested, they are engaged, they're involved, and and it really gives them that sense of agency. They get to choose what they want to do, and then that is going to pay dividends in the long run.
Yeah. Great. That's wonderful. And the other component is that if they're only looking to do minimum requirements, maybe they're revisiting, is this something for them? And that's like a sign to say, oh, you're not really engaged and motivated and interested in doing more than what's expected. So that's a good sign for them to know maybe this isn't for you, especially unless, they're busy with 700 other activities that they're trying to juggle and they're just taking on too much.
And that's something too that I wish you talk about soft skills and what should be learned. You mentioned ADHD. I'm a squirrel, so I'm like, I'm here. I drive Phil crazy, but that's okay. That's why we're here. And you need people to be teamed up with that are more grounded, more linear, and then keep you tracking, right? So you go over there, and you should have the latitude to explore, but it's good to get pulled back. And I think learning that it's critical at an early age that you can't do too much. You may want to try, but you got to learn, swim in your strong lane, right? Your best stroke. Yeah.
Exactly. Give yourself the best head start.
So with that, I think we are at a wrap here. And this again is Will Wilson. He's the Director of Educational Partnerships at Virtual Enterprise International. And we had the organization's president on earlier, but he said, "Oh, I'll leave it to Will." And so there's a perfect example, right? Will's proven himself. He's got the trust, the credibility that he's built into the organization. The CEO said, yeah, that it. You got this. And that's what we really want, right? You create empowered leaders, you create empowered students, you just create an empowered population that feels like we can take on this dumpster fire of a world and we can fix it, right? Because that's what we want to do. We want to motivate people to come up with solutions. Any parting words, Phil, before we have Will wrap it up?
No, wonderful job, Laura Lynn from the Virginia Beach area. Thank you very much. And Will did a great job.
Thanks, guys. It was really a pleasure being on. I appreciate you having me. And thanks for all the conversation.
Excellent. Well, you can find VEI online. Look for them. They've got programs probably in a school new year with all of the students that they support every year. You can catch replays of this podcast or learn more information on Midlife Success, which is our YouTube handle. Or you can just head over to helpopedia.org and learn more about all of the wonderful partnerships and things that we're doing with folks to help youth just thrive, right? Beat this world and get ahead. Thank you so much for being on the show, Will. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.